Right here, I'm just picking out all the packed in dirt and debris that's in the hoof. I do this with my hoof pick and not with my hoof knife. If you've watched other videos, some farriers will use their hoof knife, but my hoof pick is a lot better. It has two sides. One's kind of a flat scoop side. One has a point to it that I can really get in there and dig with. And plus, I've taken my knife before when I didn't use my hoof pick and just snapped a knife blade. And that hoof pick's 35 bucks, I think, or 25, and knives are more expensive than that, so I'd rather not do that too many times. And right here, I'm taking my nippers and paring out this sole. He has a lot of overgrowth. He just kind of got behind on my schedule, and I normally can't do this, but I can on him. And now I'm just nipping around the hoof wall. The flatter I nip, the less I have to rasp. So it's nice to have a good flat nip on the hoof. You make sure you don't want to gouge the hoof out anywhere crazy or go too deep. If you go too deep, you can cause them discomfort, pain, or even bleeding, unfortunately. And here I'm just kind of, since he's already long, I'm nipping around the outside of the hoof wall, so that's just less rasping I have to do from the top side when I get to that point. Topgun here I've been trimming for I don't even know how many years. If I had to guess, maybe 8 years. So he's a good old horse. He's a quarter horse, possibly paint gelding cross, and I think he's in his late teens, early 20s. Alright, so here I just let rasp the foot flat some, and now I'm going around that outside edge to bring that hoof wall back a little bit more in line where it needs to be. And I'll take my knife and get a little bit of that sole off that's protruding from the bottom of the hoof. I like them to be either level with the hoof wall or just below it. Here I'm going at about a straight down angle to try to get my breakover point. I like to trim kind of like a barefoot style trim because I don't do shoes anymore, so I have to get a nice good roll to make that breakover easier on the hoof, because any type of leverage on that hoof is going to cause distortions, which is going to cause the hoof capsule to get a little wonky and out of line. This part of the videos I sped up just because there's not too much to talk about, and we'll have 4 hooves to look at. Right now I'm using my hoof buffy there at the end just to get that breakover back like I had said before. Alright, now we're on to the back hoof here. Just picking it out again. And if you're wondering what horses in the wild do, because obviously they don't have a farrier to come trim their feet, horses in the wild typically are in more dry, harsher terrain. Captive horses and pets, we like to put them on nice little pastures and they don't move as much. And so horses need to move. They should move as much as possible. In the wild, they'll move miles and miles for different grazings and to find more water sources. I actually set my pasture up this spring in what they call a track system, or a pasture paradise if you want to look into it. There's different pages for it online and social media, or there's a book, a couple different books actually. It's more popular over in Europe, but not as much here in the States yet. And in basic terms, you build a track on the inside of your property or your pasture, and so you have your outside perimeter fence, and then you have another fence inside of that perimeter fence, and it's about 10-12 feet wide depending on how much your horses need to move or how many you have. You don't want to make it too narrow to where one could get trapped. And I have my water on one side of the track, my pastures are in the center, and then I have the entrances to the pastures on the far side, just to make them move more than they would if they just had the open pasture like they did before. I had just straight lines from different parts in the pasture where they came straight up to the water at the barn. Enough of the track system. If you want to hear more, comment and I could make another video about it. If you notice my rasp, it's not a traditional farrier rasp. I really like it. It's called a Cody James rasp. It's all made in America by a small family-owned company. They make a few different Farrier products, but it doesn't get clogged up like the normal traditional Farrier rasps, and it stays super sharp for a long time. I have them on order to get delivered every 3 months. The only downside of it is for the top work here, since they're so aggressive, that it doesn't have a smooth side, and it'll kind of leave some pretty good gouges in the hoof wall, which doesn't affect it at all, but it isn't a nice clean look. So that is why I use the hoof buffy. Traditional rasps have a rough side and a smooth side, but I use the hoof buffy to clean it all up nice and make it look pretty. And my hoof stand here, this is my second one now since 2009 when I started being a farrier and working on horses. And I don't know how people do without it. It saved my back a lot. You know, being a farrier is already a very hard and strenuous job. It's no need to do even more than you have to just to look cool. So I work on every single horse with a hoof jack or hoof stand. And here again, I'm nipping the bars out of this hoof and the toe of the sole. And I don't generally like to do this, but he has so much that it just makes it easier to pop them out. You can see all that flaky stuff that I just brushed off there. And now when I nip, I try to get the bars either level with the rest of the foot or just a little bit of a dip there, because that's the way I like to barefoot trim, so the horse and the hoof has a spot to unload that weight down. Because even though the hoof is a very hard structure, it will flex. They have slow motion videos and very close videos of the hoof actually flexing when the horse loads that hoof. It's not a solid rock structure. Here I'm trimming the frog a little bit, just kind of the dead stuff off. I don't like to trim it an awful lot. And also when I nip, I like to try to get my heels back to the widest point of the frog. I don't like them to be way in front of the frog, because then you're putting the load in a spot it should not be. You want your horse to land heel first and rotate forward, not toe first, not on one side of the foot or the other. And that Cody James rasp that I'm using again, I only replaced the insert, the teeth part of it. It comes as a frame, and the frame's the shiny metal part, and that insert's in the center. And so you just kind of loosen a bolt, slide it, that frame will separate from the insert, put the new sharp insert in, and you're ready to go. I didn't always wear leather gloves, but that Cody James rasp is just so darn sharp that I have to. It'll chew my knuckle off in a second if I don't. Back to the top work here. Once his feet are trimmed from the bottom, they're pretty clean. Some horses have pretty big flares. I like to just clean them up nice, get that flare out of the way so it's not extra leverage, which will pull the flare even more. You make a bigger flare, and then on the bottom side it pulls away from the internal structures of the hoof, and that's when you start to get thrush and things working its way up, and that's never good in a horse's hoof. Alright, we're on to our last hoof here. This is the front right. Once again, I'm picking the hoof out. I haven't always been barefoot focused in trimming hooves. I started in 2009 as what I would call the traditional farrier. I trimmed the hoof, nailed steel shoes on, and about 4 years ago, probably 2019-ish, I just decided that I really prefer barefoot. I think it's better for the horse. I think we're there technology and products wise. I'd prefer not to nail a rigid steel shoe on the hoof. I will still do glue-ons. I really like them. They absorb more concussion. They don't send as much into the leg of the horse. There's slow motion videos showing that also on the internet. And I just myself prefer barefoot. I have customers that like steel, and they'll take their horses to the Amish or another farrier when they want steel shoes, and I'll trim them when they want to go back to barefoot. here I'm just rasping flat again. I shouldn't have to do too much of it if I nipped well enough. Taking off, you see how he has a lot of extra toe hanging out in the front there and on the quarters. I've heard some people say you want about maybe a pencil width from the white line of hoof wall past the white line. I try to do what they would call the Mustang roll almost to the white line to help keep that toe backed up, because you want that hoof under that horse. Now again, I am rasping about a straight down, maybe even a 45-degree angle to try to get that Mustang roll started, to get that break over there. It makes it easier once I come on top that I already started it from the bottom, starting the roll, and then I could work the top to meet that roll, and then I'll take my rasp and my hoof buffy and kind of mesh the two together to make a nice even roll, so when that horse wants to break over at any direction, it's a lot easier than if he had a sharp flat edge like with a steel shoe, or if I just rasp that foot flat and then left it. Please like and subscribe, and if you have any video suggestions, please comment.